Hello, my name's Ian Marte, and I'll be talking to you about the Georgia governor race 2022. Let's start with the candidates. On the Republican side, we have Brian Kemp, the current governor of Georgia, elected November 6, 2018. He currently holds the record for earning the most votes than any other gubernatorial candidate in state history. He is currently running for election in an attempt to continue to build his motto of a safer and stronger Georgia. And he has also served as Secretary of State for Georgia from 2010 to 2018. Now, going to the Democratic side, we have Stacey Abrams, a political leader, voting rights activist, and a New York Times best-selling author. She also served 11 years in the Georgia House of Representatives, 7 as a Democratic leader. She was also Democratic nominee for Georgia governor in 2018, but unfortunately lost to Brian Kemp. But she is back at it again, coming back hungry for that governor seat. With the multiple organizations she's founded, fighting for issues in Georgia like voting rights, economic welfare, and gun violence. Now, on the independent side of the Libertarian Party, Shane Hazel, who served an honorable career as a Marine from 2001 to 2009, and is currently host of a very, very radical podcast where he expresses his ideas of radical freedom. Now, I want to tell you something. The founding fathers have to be rolling in their graves looking at this guy because he is something. But we'll get back to that later. Now, for media sources, the main sources of media in Georgia are the Georgia Public Broadcasting, the GPP, the NBC Atlanta, or also known as 11 Alive, and the Atlanta Journal Constitutional Newspaper, the AJC. Now, these three sources of media are very influential in the public mind of Georgia, especially for politics. Now, let's get to the polls. Now, something you should know is that Shane Hazel isn't really involved in much of these discussions as he currently holds only less than or maybe 1% of voters' mind or, voters' dedication. So we'll be focused on Kemp and Abrams for the rest of this, for the majority of the time. Now, as you can see, since the beginning of their campaign starting, Abrams has held a steady low to mid 40 range for her percent, while Kemp has held the low to mid 50s. Now, this is definitely because Georgia is, if you don't know, a red state, and seeing as Kemp has served as a pretty decent in most minds of the Georgians um, lead for his governor for the last 4 years, they find no real problems with him and are pretty much okay with him keeping his seat. However, there has been some fluctuation as you see their campaigns really taking to the nitty gritty, ad campaigns, commercials, everything around this period. Just a little fluctuation from the mid 40s to low 50s and everything like that. But as the voting time is coming around, we see Kemp at a steady lead of 51.6% and Abrams at a 44%. Now here we can just see a more in-depth evaluation on their jumps, their losses, their points, and everything here is a very certified survey taking website or institution, and you can just see that Abrams has really stayed at that mid 40 range or low 40 range, and even is getting as close to 47% and Kemp at 49%. But in the end of the day, it is 41 to 55 in favor of Kemp. Now, according to a recent poll conducted by an A-rated polling institute known as Monmouth University, revealed the key topics in the vote for the public of Georgians. Now in the lead with a major 43%, jobs and the economy and the cost of living are in the minds of Georgians. Now in second at 14%, abortion, which is pretty reasonable considering the recent events in the Supreme Court. And next, 11% is gun control because we are American. And next is 8% education, or sorry, next is 9% elections voting process. Because if you don't know, Georgia has had a little bit of a history with voting problems and rights and such like that, with their minority communities not getting the respect and rights that other communities get for voting. And next is crime and education at 8%. Now, Stacey Abrams has found that she is attacking the majority of these issues, especially economic, social, gun violence, and especially voter rights. Now, here you can just see the broad mobility for key issues, economic mobility, educational mobility, social mobility, housing affordability, healthcare, reproductive freedom, uh, hitting that abortion standpoint, military families and veteran support, rural revitalization, environmental action resilience, safety and justice, gun safety, voting rights, ethics and public integrity. Now, might I add that these are just the general overviews of her broad plans for each of these subjects, and each of these little summaries consists of pages and pages of in-depth stuff to achieve that general goal depicted in these statements. And let me tell you that they include graphs, numbers, everything you may need if you were voting in Georgia. Now, Stacey Abrams has released one commercial, Math Wiz, depicting her in a classroom full of students. And one student asked her a very complicated multiplication question, and just like that, she answers it. And when the children ask her, "How do you know so much about math?" she responds with, "You have to be good at math to be governor." And then continues to explain her plan for Georgia if she's elected, including raising teacher salaries, making affordable childcare, and investing in pre-K and schools. Now, moving on to Brian Kemp. His key issues are more in depth as he didn't include a summary to any of his ideas, and most of his ideas kind of just add on previous to his previous campaign points he ran for in 2018. But nonetheless, one of his issues is inflation relief, including $1 billion tax rebate, a Georgia Herman rebate, public safety, including combating human trafficking, and OR bond reform, and cracking down on gangs along with education, including K through 12 education programs and enhancing school safety. Now, I really have to enforce that while these issues may seem very specific and informational, Abrams did have the same thing, but I just chose not to include it because the summaries I felt provided a better outlook to what she was trying to achieve. Now, Brian Kemp's commercials not backing down is very much different from Abrams, as he takes a more direct attacking route towards Abrams, claiming that her and the liberal Bob forced an all-star game to be moved because of pressure on voting issues, and continues to say that they will put their political agenda ahead of jobs, small business, and the truth, and claims that he himself has a commitment to fair, secure, and accessible elections. Now, moving on to Hazel. We could just say this guy is envisioning a different America. Because you know, nuclear powered, uh, Bitcoin as a legal tender. We could just say that this guy is probably off the rails or smoking some like good cannabis he wants to legalize. Moving on now to the debate portion. Now we'll be focusing on the recent debate between Abrams and Kemp that occurred October 27th or to 30th. I'm not sure about the exact date, but there were the key issues that the public of Georgia is voting on. We're discussing this debate, including abortion. And Abrams in this debate, and beginning with the abortion topic, Abrams underlined the hedge. Under this governor, women are in danger. She even said, citing dismissal of maternal mortality rights in the state, and continued, Brian Kemp does not have a plan for the lives of women who are being forced to carry pregnancies to the term. Now, when being asked a similar question or questions about abortion, Kemp continued to dodge the question, acknowledging his legislation that he passed about the issue and stating that he desires to move the needle no further on this issue. Not many brownie points there for Kemp for the women, but moving on to voter rights. Abrams. Now, for those of you that don't know, Abrams did found an organization, multiple organizations fighting voter rights, and is a very proud advocate for them. And as you saying in the debate, let's be clear that the voter suppression I'm talking about is felt by Georgians every single day. Now, Kemp, in replying to this, says that his law makes it easy to vote and hard to cheat, which doesn't really address the whole people around Georgia needing to vote. But he even added that Abrams has been running around and scaring people about suppressive votes and suppressive legislation. Kind of sounding a little bit weird there, Kemp, but to each their own, to each their own. Now to the economy. For those of you that don't know, Kemp has made several successful improvements to the Georgian economy and is the backbone of his campaign. Now, Abrams and her and her input to this debate has made the case by saying that the economic pain people are feeling is real, and even tied it against policies as governor, including his refusal to expand Medicaid. She even attacked him for a tax cut this past year, and even claimed that what I will not do is give tax cuts to the wealthy and powerful. I will focus on our workers and our small businesses, putting them first. Now, Kemp, in response, and argued that the inflation economic pain should be blamed on a disastrous policy agenda by Joe Biden and the Democrats who have complete control in Washington, D.C., which is difficult to understand considering that he, in fact, has control of his state because, this is once again America. But, you know, considering his achievements in the economic standing, this portion of the debate didn't really influence any voters or sparked any oohs or ahs from the crowd. Now for gun control, one of the biggest, or maybe the biggest topic in America. Now, Abrams saying that street gangs are one part of the problem, and mind you, this is in response to Kemp's previous statements about gangs being the only problem with gun usage. Now, I'll continue. Street gangs are one part of the problem, but we have a governor who has weakened gun laws in this state, flooded our streets with guns by letting dangerous people get access to these weapons. Now, Kemp, in response to this, said local permitting processes were holding up law-abiding citizens' ability to protect themselves and pointed to federal background checks as a stopgap. And it continues with the largest, fastest growing segment of the population that's buying handguns and firearms is African American and females. You know why? Because the criminals are the only ones that do have the guns. Now, if you just read what I read or heard what I heard, it almost sounds like he's calling African Americans and females criminals. Hmm, interesting, Kemp. Interesting. Now, that was my take on the Georgia Governor 2022 race. Be sure to cast your vote in the next upcoming election. And have a wonderful patriotic day.